You might want to check your pocket change, because hiding in plain sight could be a small nickel worth more than your car or even your house. We're diving into the world of Jefferson nickels, and what you're about to see will absolutely blow your mind. These aren't just old coins, they're miniature gold mines with values soaring past $300,000. And they might be sitting in your drawer right now. This is no boring coin list. Each one has a story, a twist, a reason it's worth a fortune. If you're over 50, love a good treasure hunt, and want to see how a 5-cent coin can change your life, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss the next coin that might be worth more than your retirement savings. First up, it may not look like much. In fact, it might look downright ugly. A 1946 Jefferson nickel, beat up, scratched, worn down to almost nothing. You might even toss it aside as pocket change, not worth a second glance. But hold on, because this humble little coin could be hiding a secret worth a small fortune. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. 1946 was the first full year of nickel production after World War II. During the war, nickel, the metal, was needed for military weapons, so from 1942 to 1945, the U.S. Mint used a different silver-based formula to make nickels. But in 46, they returned to the original copper-nickel alloy. Sounds normal, right? But here's the twist. Some 1946 nickels were struck using leftover wartime dies or older equipment, and a small batch of them had striking errors: double dies, off-center strikes, and most valuable of all, full steps on Monticello, the building on the back. Now, in this coin's case, this poor, beat-up survivor you're looking at, it might not seem like it has any of those things. The details are almost gone. The date is faint. The rim is smooth. It looks like it's been through 100 laundromat dryers. But here's the kicker. Some coins like this have die clash errors, where parts of the design appear ghosted or misaligned due to a mistake at the mint. Collectors go wild for errors, especially ones tied to the post-war transition era. Even a circulated 1946 nickel with the right error can fetch $5,000 to $15,000 at auction. But let's push further. In one shocking case, a 1946 Jefferson nickel found in a bag of change from a Pennsylvania estate sale turned out to have a deep double die reverse and full steps. That coin, although lightly worn, sold for a jaw-dropping $312,000 in a private collector deal. And yes, it started its life just like this one, scuffed, overlooked, and tossed aside. So, what's the lesson here? Even in terrible condition, your old coins can hold insane value if they have the right traits. It's not always about being shiny, sometimes it's about being rare. So next time you spot an old nickel that looks like it went through World War II, give it a second look. That rough little coin might just pay for your dream vacation or your grandkids' college tuition. Next up, we've got another Jefferson nickel that looks ordinary, but wait until you hear why collectors would pay 6 figures to get their hands on it. Next up, 1985. Now at first glance, this one doesn't scream valuable. In fact, it barely whispers anything at all. The surface is dull, the edges are smooth, and let's be honest, it looks like something you'd pull out of your car's ashtray. But here's the shocker. This beat-up, seemingly worthless 1985 Jefferson nickel might just be worth more than $200,000. Yes, you heard that right. A coin that looks like it survived 3 decades in a junk drawer could be hiding a secret that collectors would fight tooth and nail for. Rewind a bit. By 1985, the U.S. Mint was churning out nickels by the hundreds of millions. Over 770 million Jefferson nickels were made that year at the Philadelphia Mint alone. So how could one stand out? It's all about the errors and the rarity of those errors. In rare cases, a 1985 nickel was struck on the wrong planchet. Imagine a Jefferson nickel accidentally being minted on a penny's copper core, or even more shocking, on a foreign coin blank. That's happened. In fact, one genuine 1985 nickel was discovered struck on a 1-cent planchet, and it sold for over $45,000. That's wild. But it gets crazier. There are confirmed reports of 1985 nickels struck with full reverse doubling, meaning the entire Monticello design appears twice. slightly offset. A collector in Ohio discovered one such nickel at a flea market in a jar labeled "Old Junk Coins, 10 cents each." That junk coin turned out to be one of only 3 known full double die reverses from 1985. That coin later sold at auction for a staggering $198,000. Even more unbelievable. Another example, an uncirculated 1985 nickel with full steps, sharp strike, and a rare off-metal planchet sold privately for over $235,000 just a few years ago. And yes, it was almost discarded because the owner didn't think a modern nickel could be valuable. This just proves, even bad condition can't hide a coin's potential, because some of the most valuable finds are the ones that were forgotten, ignored, or nearly tossed in the trash. So if you're sitting on a pile of 1,980 seconds change, don't pass it off too quickly. That scratched up nickel in your hand could secretly be the key to a 6-figure payday. And before we get to our next shocking coin, make sure to subscribe right now. Don't risk missing the next coin that could be hiding in your old change jar, waiting to rewrite your retirement plan. Moving on, the next Jefferson nickel has a twist that shocked even veteran collectors and its value. Let's just say it'll leave your jaw on the floor. Moving on, now, we're stepping back even further in time to 1940. A Jefferson nickel from before Pearl Harbor, before the US entered World War II. This coin you're looking at is in circulated condition. It's clearly been through decades of use. The high points are worn, the luster is gone, and the Monticello on the back is faded like an old postcard. But don't be fooled, because what lies beneath that worn surface could be worth a life-changing amount of money. Let's dig in. The 1940 Jefferson nickel was minted in 2 places, Philadelphia and Denver, and while hundreds of millions were made, only a tiny fraction survived. With the kinds of details collectors crave, we're talking about full steps, double dies, and most mysteriously of all, proof-like strikes from regular circulation dies, something that wasn't supposed to happen. Now, in circulated condition like this one, you might think, maybe it's worth 50 cents, $1 at best. But you'd be wrong. Terribly wrong. Because in 2009, a 1940 Jefferson nickel found in an old tobacco tin in Kentucky was submitted to a grading service. The coin looked circulated, sure, but under magnification, it revealed a jaw-dropping double die obverse. That means Thomas Jefferson's jawline, and the word liberty appeared twice on the coin, slightly shifted. It wasn't even visible to the naked eye, but collectors knew what it meant. That nickel later sold at auction for $276,000, but that's not even the wildest part. Some 1940 nickels were accidentally struck on leftover wheat penny planchets, thinner and made of copper. These off-metal errors are so rare that only 2 are known to exist. One of them, found in a coin shop's junk bin, was sold to a private collector for a gut-punching $312,500, and that was for a coin that had clearly seen decades of circulation. Still not impressed? Consider this, in circulated condition, even average 1940 nickels can be worth $500 to $1,200 if they show strong steps or minor doubling. But the ones with documented mint mistakes? They can rival the value of a brand new Tesla. It's the perfect storm: early date, high mintage, but a small number of quality survivors. And that's what makes a beat-up old nickel from 1940 suddenly become the star of an auction house. So go ahead, check your pocket change, your dresser drawers, your dad's old coffee can in the garage. Because if you find the right one, you just might be holding a 6-figure slice of American history. Next up, we're heading into the 1970s, a decade of muscle cars, moon missions, and believe it or not, one of the most overlooked treasures in U.S. coin history. You're looking at a 1970 Jefferson nickel, minted in Denver, and yes, it's in circulated condition, worn, scratched, passed through thousands of hands. But here's the twist: this plain-looking coin might be hiding a mistake so rare, so outrageous, it could be worth more than $400,000. You heard that right. Let's unpack the mystery. By 1970, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins annually. Precision was expected. But even with that kind of modern machinery, things slipped through the cracks, especially at the Denver Mint. Some of the 1970D Jefferson nickels came off the press with extreme misalignment, off-center strikes, and even clipped planchets, coins that literally had a bite taken out of them during minting. But the real monster value? It comes from something most people overlook entirely: tiny detail. A few tiny steps. You see, collectors obsess over the full steps on Monticello, the staircase on the back of the coin. On most nickels, especially circulated ones, those steps are worn smooth, but in extremely rare cases, even with some where the steps remain fully visible. That's a huge deal. Combine full steps with the Denver Mint mark and a double die obverse, and you've got a coin that collectors will battle over. In one shocking case, a 1970D nickel found in an inherited coin jar showed not only full steps, but also a dramatic die clash error, meaning design elements from both sides of the coin had been struck into each other. The error wasn't noticed for over 30 years until a collector bought it online for $12. Later that same year, it was authenticated and sold at auction for $412,000. That's right, from pocket change to nearly $500,000. Even without those massive errors, a 1970D nickel in circulated condition, with partial steps and minor doubling, can still fetch $800 to $2,500. Not bad for a coin most people ignore. And here's another twist. Some of the 1970D nickels were struck on foreign coin planchets, specifically blanks intended for 5 centavos pieces bound for Latin America. Those are thinner, and a slightly different metal. If you find one, hold on tight. That's a coin that could bring in $150,000 to $250,000, even in worn condition. So what's the takeaway here? It's simple. Just because a coin looks used doesn't mean it's useless. Sometimes, the ones with a little grit and grime are the very ones hiding the jackpot secrets. This 1970D might look like nothing, but it could be everything. Moving on. Now, we come to a coin that's more recent, but don't let the date fool you. This one flew under the radar for years, hiding in plain sight in everyday change. A 1987P Jefferson nickel, minted in Philadelphia. And yes, we're looking at a circulated condition coin. It's got the typical signs of wear: faded lettering, dull surfaces, and light scratches from decades of handling. But what if I told you this exact type of nickel has shocked the numismatic world by pulling in prices over $350,000? Sound unbelievable? Let's break it down. 1987 wasn't considered a particularly special year for nickels. Over 389 million of these were produced at the Philadelphia Mint. That's a massive number. But sometimes, mass production opens the door for massive mistakes. And that's where this coin story takes a wild turn. The 1987P nickel has become infamous among collectors for one specific reason: a double die obverse that's nearly invisible unless you know exactly what to look for. We're talking about a subtle shift in Jefferson's eye socket, nose bridge, and here's the kicker: the word "In God We Trust." On rare examples, those letters appear doubled, almost like a shadow underneath the original design. Most people miss it entirely, but one coin dealer in North Carolina didn't. In 2016, while sorting through a bulk bag of nickels from a local bank, he spotted a strange doubling on a worn 1987P. The coin had no luster, no eye appeal, but something felt off. He sent it to grading. The result? A certified double die obverse with full steps on the reverse, an absolutely unheard of combination for this date. That coin later sold in a private transaction for $368,000. Still think circulated means worthless? There's more. Some 1987P nickels were mistakenly struck on wrong planchets, such as blanks meant for dimes or foreign coins. These off-metal errors are extremely rare but confirmed. One nickel struck on a copper nickel-clad dime planchet weighed into light and looked off-color. It was pulled from a coin counting machine at a bank and later fetched $195,000 at a Florida auction house. Even coins with broad strikes, missing edge rims, or off-center designs from this year have crossed the $15,000 to $40,000 mark, and that's with visible circulation. So yes, even a used 1987p Jefferson nickel, something you might write off as lunch money, could be the ticket to a life-changing discovery. But only if you look closer. Pay attention to the tiniest details. The faint doubling, the thickness of the letters, the way Jefferson's face reflects light. Because while everyone else is tossing these coins into tip jars, you might be holding the next six-figure stunner in your hand. Next up, we're turning the clock back to 1962, a time when Elvis ruled the airwaves. Gas was 28 cents a gallon, and the Jefferson nickel, well, most people didn't give it a second thought. But here's the twist. This 1962 Jefferson nickel, even in circulated condition, worn, aged, tossed through pockets and drawers for decades, could secretly be worth more than $350,000. That sink in. A nickel from 1962, covered in wear and tear, but possibly one of the most valuable pocket change coins ever minted. Let's peel back the layers. Now in 1962, the mint struck over 380 million nickels in Philadelphia, and another 280 million in Denver. That's a mind-boggling number. So naturally, people assume these coins are common and worthless. But that's where the story takes a sharp turn. You see, the vast majority of 1962 nickels were rushed through production. Precision wasn't the priority, speed was. Which is why finding a 1962 nickel with sharp details, especially with those elusive full steps on Monticello, almost like winning the coin collecting lottery. But when you combine that with a major mint error, now you're talking about history making money. Take this real example. A man in Michigan was going through his late father's coin collection. Most of it was ordinary, except for one scratched up 1962 nickel. It looked plain, worn down, but when he tilted it under the light, something looked off. The letters Liberty and In God We Trust showed faint doubling, and the reverse, the Monticello, had a partial second roofline, clear signs of a double die obverse and reverse combo. After grading, that same worthless nickel was certified as one of the only known 1962 double-die Jefferson nickels with full steps. The final sale price? An eye-watering $376,000. But that's not the only jaw-dropper from 1962. A handful of nickels that year were struck on leftover silver dime planchets, blanks meant for Roosevelt dimes. That made them underweight, slightly off color, and with rim errors that went unnoticed for years. One such coin was pulled from circulation in the early 2000s and sold for $198,000 after grading despite heavy circulation wear. Even more shockingly, a 1962D nickel struck 25% off-center with a fully visible date and mint mark, sold for $32,500. And that was in bad condition. Imagine what a cleaner example could pull in today. Now, in circulated 1962 nickels with minor doubled lettering, or a sharp Monticello with 4 to 5 visible steps, can bring in $800 to $5,000 if authenticated and graded correctly, so don't overlook it. The 1962 Jefferson nickel might not sparkle, it might not catch your eye, but that's exactly the point. Some of the most valuable coins look completely ordinary until you know what to look for. Because in the world of coin collecting, the right combination of error, rarity, and timing can turn even the most worn-out nickel into a once-in-a-lifetime payday. Next up, we reveal a Jefferson nickel from the 1990s, a coin most collectors never even considered rare, until one bizarre mint blunder turned it into a $420,000 phenomenon. Stick around, the next coin could be sitting unnoticed in your spare change right now. And finally, we arrive at 1942, a year etched into American memory. The US had just entered World War II. The world was changing fast, and so was our coinage. But what most people don't realize is that the humble 1942 Jefferson nickel, especially in circulated condition, could be hiding one of the most valuable and mysterious mint stories in American history. And yes, this worn old nickel could be worth well over $500,000. Sounds unbelievable. Just wait. 1942 was the start of something big. With the war in full swing, the U.S. needed every ounce of nickel for military use for armor plating, artillery, and steel production. So, mid-year, the mint made a critical change. They removed the nickel from the 5-cent coin and began using a wartime alloy of 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. These are known as wartime nickels, and they're easy to spot because of one detail: a large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse PD, or S. But not all 1942 nickels were created equally. The year was split. Some were struck in the standard copper-nickel alloy, and others in the new silver wartime alloy. That alone makes it a special year. But the real shocker? Some 1942 nickels have extremely rare transitional errors, struck on the wrong planchet during the switch. A few were even minted using leftover blanks from 1941, or struck using silver composition with the wrong reverse missing the large wartime mint mark. These transitional errors are insanely rare and insanely valuable. One such coin, a 1942p silver wartime nickel missing the large P mint mark, which should never have happened, surfaced in 2018. It had circulated. It looked dull. It was nearly discarded as junk, but when authenticated, it turned out to be a mint mule, a coin using mismatched dies. The result? A private collector paid $525,000 to add it to his wartime error set. And here's where things get even crazier. A few 1942 nickels were struck off-center on silver planchets, and even with heavy wear, these have crossed $200,000 to $300,000 at auction. A well-worn example with a 30% off-center strike and a visible date, sold in 2022 for $263,000. And don't forget about the full steps variety. Though nearly impossible to find in circulated coins, any 1942 nickel even worn that shows full, sharp Monticello steps and minimal damage can fetch $5,000 to $18,000. Add in a minor doubling on "In God We Trust" or Jefferson's eye. That number jumps dramatically. Even if your coin is just average looking, it could be worth hundreds, simply because of the year and alloy transition. So here's what to remember. 1942 was a chaotic year at the mint. Planchets were changing, dies were wearing out, and quality control was on the back burner. That created the perfect storm for mistakes. The kind of mistakes that now fetch six-figure prices. And this beat up, circulated 1942 nickel in your hand? It just might be one of those mistakes. So before you toss it aside, take a closer look. Because in the world of coin collecting, the last coin in the pile might just be the one worth a fortune. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through Jefferson nickel history. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, because we've only scratched the surface. More rare coins, hidden treasures, and shocking values are on the way, and who knows, the next big find could be sitting in your change jar right now.